Hello everyone, welcome back to the Hayley's Face knitting podcast. My name is Hayley and I am a nurse and knitter from Melbourne, Australia, and I'm coming to you today with episode 2 of my knitting podcast. This is super exciting. I wanted to say a huge thank you first of all to everyone who watched my first episode. The reception was just so wonderful and you all seem to love it so much, so I'm obviously back with a second episode. I also wanted to say a huge thank you for all of your lovely, wonderful comments on both my first episode and my knitting vlog that I posted. You all told me where you were from and what you were knitting on, and it was just so great to have a chat with some of you, and I definitely got some new pattern ideas from your comments as well, which was awesome. I've just got back from 2.5 weeks of traveling, so I flew to Western Australia to go visit my family for 2 weeks. And then the day after I returned from Western Australia, I drove to Daylesford with some of my friends, which is sort of northish Victoria, northwest Victoria. I'm still trying to get my head around Victoria sort of geography. I'm not from Victoria, so northwest, I think. I'll put a little map up so you can see, but we spent about 4 days in Daylesford, which was so lovely. So I've just got back from that today and wanted to talk to you about my knitting because I smashed through a lot of knitting whilst I was on holiday. I was going to film a sort of travel knitting vlog whilst I was away in Western Australia, but I found it quite difficult because both my parents took time off of work and I didn't feel comfortable including them in any of the clips or anything. So I took a lot of B-roll and I'll scatter that out through the video so you can sort of see the scenery and the weather because it was beautiful whilst I was there. Hi, Editing Hayley here. I completely forgot to mention this in the video, but I'm in Canberra for the weekend. I've just sat my GAMSAT exam today whilst I've been here, and whilst I was editing the video I found it difficult to put the footage overlaid on top of me talking because I was showing you a lot of the things that I was actually talking about. So what I ended up doing is putting a little mini vlog at the end of this video, compiling the footage from my trip. So if you're not interested in that at the end, that's fine. Timestamps are all here, so you can skip over that when you get to it if it's not your cup of tea. But if it is your cup of tea, that will be right at the end. Okay, I hope you enjoy. If you are new here, I follow the typical podcast format of finished objects, whips, and plans or acquisitions. And then I go into a little bit of nitty chat where I talk about things I've been reading or watching at the moment or listening to. I hope you have something nice to drink, something fun to knit or crochet on whilst watching this video. And yeah, I think I might just get into it and we'll start with finished objects. The first finished object is one that I did not show in my previous podcast, but was something that had already been cast on. This was a languishing whip for me that I decided to finish up during August because it was just sitting there and I really wanted to get it done and see how it ended up looking. And that is the Weekend Slipover V-neck by PetiteKnit, which I'll show you here in this brown sort of teddy bear brown sort of color. Now I knit this up in the size medium and I used some Stash acrylic yarn. So I cast this project on in 2022, maybe last year, or maybe 2021, I can't quite remember. And I got all the way to the neckline ribbing and then I think we moved house or we went away on holiday or something and I completely forgot which needle size I used, and so it just sat in my whip basket for ages and I never picked it up. So I thought I want to get rid of some of my stash this year, so we might as well finish that up. And I just grabbed, I think, a 5mm needle and used that for the neckline ribbing and it came out okay. The main issue I have with this piece is that it's knit up in acrylic. Acrylic yarn obviously isn't the best quality yarn and it's also not the consistency or the fabric that I really wanted from this project. I think acrylic yarn definitely has its place in the knitting and fiber art world, but if I was to knit this project again, which I do want to do, acrylic is definitely not the way I would go. I love to knit it up in like a drapey merino or alpaca sort of yarn. Overall though, I'm happy with this project. I haven't really worn it out just because it doesn't quite have the effect that I want from this piece, but I think styled it looks really cute. So that's my weekend slipover. Let's talk socks. One of these pairs of socks you will have already seen if you watched my vlog that I did recently, and that is a pair of Sunday socks by PetiteKnit. I'll just unroll them. Sunday socks by PetiteKnit. I hope you guys can see those. I knit these up for my boyfriend, and they're knit up in Four Seasons Montana, which is 100% wool yarn that you can get commercially here in Australia. Because they're for my boyfriend, I knit them up in the 4th size, and I'm going to be gifting these to him quite soon. I think I'm going to send them over in the mail. Because they're 100% wool, they're intended to be bed socks, and they came out beautifully. I'm really happy with how they look. One is bigger than the other, which tends to happen to me with socks. I swear to you on my life, these are the same stitch counts. I triple checked because I was concerned. Same stitch counts, everything, but I think same needle size as well, but I think because my first one, I think it's my first one that's a little bit tighter, and then I loosened up with the second one because I got used to the pattern, which I think is quite a common thing. But overall, I'm happy with how they came out, and I think he will like them. Along the Sunday sock train, I decided whilst I was away, after I finished that pair for my partner, that I wanted to knit up a pair for myself. So I went to Spotlight and got some commercial yarn again, and using the same needle size, which was a 4mm needle, I knit up a green pair. I find these so cute. Now, I'll get into the foot length in a second, because you're probably looking at those going, Hayley, the foot length on that is literally a child size, but I'll talk about that in a second. These socks I knit up using Bella Baby Wonder yarn, which is a 60% acrylic, 40% nylon blend. And I'm really happy with the fabric that it created. I love that it's sort of self-striping, sort of, what's the word called? Variegated, maybe? I can never tell the difference between all the terminology, but I love the fabric that it made up, and it's super stretchy. They're super, super comfortable and very warm. And these took me a couple of days to knit up. They're super easy. I think DK weight socks? Aran weight socks? Something like that. So they were super quick to knit up, but I did knit the feet way too short. I got overexcited, and I knit these up whilst binging some movies, and when I was measuring the foot length, I didn't like stretch the, oh, it looks so comical here. I didn't stretch the foot out when I measured it. So they are short, but I think I'm gonna block them again. I didn't have my sock blockers with me whilst I was on holiday, and I wasn't just gonna make a pair of sock blockers just for one pair of socks. So I am gonna block these again and see if I can get that foot length out a bit. Otherwise, it's not that much of an issue for me, to be honest. They are house socks. Like I've made them with the intention to be house or bed socks. So I'm not overly concerned, but I will block them and see if I can get that foot length a little bit longer. But overall, I'm happy with this second pair of Sunday socks. That's all I have to say about socks. I did get into some baby knits this month as well, starting with this one. It's so cute, isn't it? Oh my gosh, it's just the most adorable thing I've ever seen in my life. This is the Blue Cloud Baby Beanie pattern by Drops Design, free pattern that you can find on their website or on Ravelry. And I knit this one up using leftover yarn from my Sunday socks in the 0 to 1 month size. I cannot cope. Hold on, let me try and get you to see. I can't cope. It's the cutest. It is the cutest thing I've ever seen in my life. I wanted to use up the leftover yarn from the Sunday socks, and so I knew a baby knit was the way to go. I didn't quite know what I wanted to knit up though, so I just went to Drops and grabbed a free pattern from there. I'm sorry, the trams. I felt like I was playing yarn chicken a little bit, but we ended up having enough to finish up this baby beanie, and I'm obsessed. Someone gave me the idea from my first podcast episode to donate my baby knits to a women's shelter, and I think that is the most perfect use of these baby knits. but this one I don't think I can part with. So I think I'm gonna hold on to this one for myself, possibly for the future. No immediate plans, but possibly in the future. That was knit up using a 4mm needle as well. My 4mm needles got the most work out of any needles on holiday. I took a 4mm, a 4.5mm, and then there's another whip that I'll talk about, which is using, I think, a 3.5 or 3.25mm needle, but I barely used that at all. So it was really my 4mm needles just got such a workout. My next finished object you will have seen before in my previous podcast as a whip, and that is the good old Raglan in this beautiful purple color. This pattern is a free pattern by Twisted Knitwear, also known as Karen Court, and I knit this pattern up using some Stash acrylic yarn. If you want more information about this one, go have a look at my first podcast episode where I talk about it as a whip. But I wanted to use up this purple yarn and sort of get rid of it. So again, baby knit, the way to go for stash busting. And I'm really happy with how it came out. I think this sweater pattern is so easy to follow and so easy to modify. And I think it's a perfect beginner's pattern if you're just getting into knitting and jumper knitting as well. I think a baby knit or even a toddler knit using this pattern is a perfect place to start. The pattern is so clear. It gives you very detailed instructions about short rows, what to do without short rows, stitch counts, how to increase and decrease, all of that jazz, and it's free. So if you're wanting to get into raglans, I would definitely suggest this pattern, and it's just so cute. I just love it so much. I'm thinking this one might be a donation. Let me check the size I knit this up in. This is the 6 to 9 month size, but it is, I feel like it's quite big. I feel like this could fit like a 1-year-old maybe. Just, I don't know, baby proportions are funny, but I'm very happy with that one and glad that I got that one finished. The next finished object is a big finished object that was for me, and I managed to finish this one up on holiday. I showed this to you as well in my previous podcast, but I think it was quite a small whip. I think I had maybe cast on the bottom ribbing of the first panel and had done a couple of rows, I think. So not much done at all. And I finally got it finished, and I'm actually so incredibly proud. Some of the ends aren't woven in yet, and there's a couple like holy bits that I need to go over with my darning needle, but I'm very proud of it. And that is my basic knit tee, a back to basics knit tee. There we go, look at that color. Oh, this is a pattern by LionBrand, a free pattern that you can get on their website or on Ravelry as well. I knit this up in Modavira Shadow, which I think is a 60% cotton, 40% acrylic. And it has produced the perfect drapey fabric for this t-shirt. I'm so happy with how the fabric came out. It was exactly how I envisioned. The fit is exactly how I envisioned. I knit up a size small and it fits me perfectly. It is knit in panels. And what I didn't realize, and I got incorrect in my first podcast episode, is that you knit the front and back panels, you attach them at the shoulder seams, and then you cast on the shoulders while the piece is still flat. So you don't seam up the sides and then knit the sleeves in the round. You actually knit the sleeves flat back and forth and then seam up the sides of the body and the sleeves, if that makes sense. And I love the way that came out. I think it gives the sleeve some direction, and it gives the whole project structure, because obviously the ribbing is done in garter stitch. And I hope you can see the ribbing's done in the garter stitch there. And I think it just needed the structure. Otherwise it was just going to just drape and continue to grow and fall. So I think the seaming all the way up the sides and then along the sleeves gives the piece some foundation to work with. I'm so happy with this project and how it came out. It's my first summer knit for 2023, which is super exciting. And it was so nice to have it whilst I was by the beach. It was the perfect thing to knit on by the water. And I did a couple of walks along the beach, some knit walks, and took that with me. And that was just fantastic. So I'm really proud of that project. The next finished object I cast on and cast off in the same day while I was in Western Australia, my dad and I did a road trip up to Perth City, which was about a 5-hour drive up and then 5 hours back for us. So total 10 hours of driving for the day. And I needed something easy to knit on whilst we were in the car, whilst I was keeping him company. And I had some yarn with me that I bought when I bought the Bella Baby green yarn. And I was originally going to cast on another pair of Sunday socks, but I found that the yarn was actually quite thin. It was probably closer, I think, to I'd say a sport weight yarn. And with my 4mm needles, which was all I had, it wasn't making the fabric that I wanted for a pair of socks. So I decided to knit up a beanie, and it was literally the morning of our road trip when I decided on this pattern. I was scrolling through my pattern library on my computer and scrolling through the Drops website trying to find a free pattern, also on Ravelry, and I couldn't really find anything that really struck me. And then I saw this pattern on the Drops website, and it's a 1x1 rib beanie pattern. Here we go. Here we go. Now, I'll put a picture up of the actual pattern and what the beanie is supposed to look like, because my beanie definitely does not look like the pattern when it is on my head. And that is because of the yarn choice. The yarn I picked, it's very, very drapey, very, very floppy. It doesn't have much structure to it at all. And I did end up knitting the pattern shorter than it suggested because of how the fabric was coming out. I knew it wasn't going to stand up the way that I wanted it to and have the structure I wanted it to. So I knit it shorter so that it would round over my head as opposed to pointing up like the pattern intends. I love this decrease style. I have never done this type of decrease before. You can kind of see it's like a three-point decrease, which would give it that sort of pointy top. I think I'll put it on here as opposed to doing some B-roll. I'll just show you. So there we go. That's it. I love it. I love the white. I love the speckles. I think I don't have anything like this in my wardrobe, and I think it's just the perfect beanie addition. It is super, super warm. I haven't told you what yarn I've used. And I haven't told you the pattern name. Okay. Frosty Apple Beanie by Drops Design. 1x1 rib beanie. I knit the size medium to large, and the yarn I used is LionBrand Baby Soft, which is 60% acrylic, 40% nylon. Now that I've given you the specs, after talking at length, I'm very happy with this beanie. I love how it came out. As I said, nothing like it in my wardrobe. And even though winter is coming to a close, we are now in spring here in Australia, it's still quite chilly. So I am still wearing this sometimes. And I love it. I love it. Very happy with that. My last finished object, guys, was another baby knit. I had some leftover yarn from the navy Sunday socks that I knit up, and so I decided to knit up another baby hat. I was gonna do another blue cloud beanie, but I decided to do something a little bit different, and I did another Drops Design free pattern. This is the roll-on baby hat, which is super cute. I'll show you a picture of what it looks like on a baby, because I think when I show people like this, it looks kind of funny. It looks like a little top hat. Do you know the guy from Meet the Robinsons? I think that's what it's called. And Goob, that's the bad guy. This reminds me of his top hat and like the little evil top hat robot. Anyway, so I knit that up in the 4 Seasons Montana yarn, the same yarn I used for my Sunday socks for my boyfriend, and that was a 4mm needle, and I knit that up in the 1 to 3 month size. I knit this up on the last day that I was in Western Australia. It took me maybe 4 hours. My dad and I were binging some TV, so that's what I was working on during that time. And yeah, it was a great stash buster, great use of that leftover yarn, because there really wasn't much left, and I didn't want to bring excess yarn home that was just going to sit in my stash. So that served its purpose. Those are all of my finished objects. I have no idea how many there were, maybe 8, I think it was. I do have to say, disclaimer, that is not a normal knitting month for me. As I said, I've been on holiday. I sat on the couch and knit for literally 14 days straight. So that's what all that was. Let's talk about works in progress that we're still working on. I'm going to start with the one that you have seen. You will have seen this in my previous podcast and in my most recent vlog, and that is my Cumulus blouse by PetiteKnit. It is all over the place. I have yarn balls going everywhere, needles going everywhere, but I'm very, very happy with the progress that I have made. So whilst I was away, well, if you watched my vlog, you will have seen I bound off the body. Yeah, I bound off the body. I could bind off. I omitted the decreases, and I'm going to wait until blocking to assess whether I need to put elastic in the bottom ribbing or not. As you can see, it is curling, which is not what we want, but that's okay. Whilst I was away, I did finish a sleeve. I hope you can see that. I think you can, yeah. I finished up a sleeve. I knit the sleeve to pattern, except I didn't like how short it was when I finished the decreases, so I decided to add some length, and I bound that off on the plain. But as you can see, my I could bind off is not finished. Where are we? My I could bind off is unfinished, and that's because I didn't have my darning needle on the airplane home with me, so I stuck some scrap yarn in there so that I could start working on the next sleeve whilst I was on the plane. So I'm going to finish that sleeve off hopefully tonight, maybe tomorrow at the airport, because I am going on another flight tomorrow, which I will get to. Then I started on the second sleeve and knitting that exactly the same. And then hopefully this will be a finished object by the time you next see me. If you haven't seen this project before, I'm knitting this up in Abbey Road, the Wind Cries Merino, with a 5.5mm needle, I think it is. I think it's a 65% merino, and then it's got baby alpaca and pliamide in it. I think that's the combination. I'm not sure of the percentages, but that's the yarn combination. I do have to say that I am in love with I-cord bind off. I was super scared about trying it. I've never done I-cord before this project, and I fell in love with it. I love how therapeutic it is. You see your piece bound off, but with the most beautiful finish to it. And I sort of feel that way with Italian or tubular bind off, but I could bind off, like, it just looks so clean, and I love that aspect of it. So I'm actually really excited to bind off the second sleeve. I think that's all I have to say about my Cumulus blouse. I made some significant progress, but nothing has really changed. I'm happy with how it looks at the moment, and I'm excited to finish it, and hopefully I can show you a finished object next month. The next whip, and the last one I have to show you that I have physically here with me, is another good old Raglan by Twisted Knitwear. I'm knitting this one up in the 0 to 1 month size. Hold on, let me check. 0 to 3 month size. And this I'm also knitting up in LionBrand Baby Soft, which is what I knit up my frosted apple beanie in. As you can see, from a 100-gram ball, my frosted apple beanie, literally, I think I weighed it, and my frosty apple beanie only used 30 grams of this yarn, which is crazy. I wasn't anticipating that. It really stretched a long way, so I knew I needed to knit up something else. So I cast on a baby knit. Obviously, what else would I have cast on? Cast on a baby knit, and it's really, really difficult to show you because I'm doing it magic loop until I get enough stitches to do it normally. Oh my god, and it's tangled. What's new? I think you can kind of see that. It is tiny. It's so small, it's so cute. But again, white speckled yarn, super cute. I love the rainbow, and I think it's gonna come out really cute. I really don't have anything else to say about this project. I'm happy with the fabric it's creating. I think it's going to be adorable, and I cannot wait to show it to you as a finished object. I'm still on the Raglan increases, hence the stitch markers. and hoping to finish the Raglan, like the yoke, this weekend, so I can start on the body next week. So hopefully have that bound off soon. The last whip that I have, I don't actually have here. I cannot find it for the life of me. I swear I put it in my suitcase, but I really don't know if I did. I might have left it on the couch at home at my parents' house, which would be so strange because I swear I packed it. And that is Camisole number 5 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. I'm knitting it up in a size medium using Modavira Shadow yarn, which is what I used for my Back to Basics knit tee. But I'm doing it in sort of this bluey purple. I can show you. I have a ball here in this bluey purple color, which I'm just obsessed with. I finished the left front of this pattern, and I didn't take a crochet hook with me to Western Australia, so I unfortunately wasn't able to cast on the right front. So I finished the left front whilst I was on holiday, and then it just sat there for like a week and a half. And I didn't want to do another cast on method, like provisional cast on method. That just wasn't on my agenda. So I just left it, and now I think it's left behind. If I can find it at home, I will continue on that and I will show it to you next time. Otherwise, I'll get my mum to mail it over to me, and it will be in the exact same state next time I do an update on this podcast. So those are all my finished objects and whips. I'm going to talk now about plans because I have a couple that have changed since the last time I spoke to you. I have not touched my Moby sweater. Thank you for your tips in the comments, by the way. I will hopefully be getting back to that because I am planning to go to the US in January for a little holiday. And obviously it's going to be cold there, planning to go to Colorado where it will be snowing. So I'd love to have my Moby finished for then, but I haven't touched it yet. I will, I promise. And when I do, when I have some progress, I will show you. I also haven't touched my granny square blanket. If I make any progress on that that's like significant, I'll show you that as well, but nothing so far. My next major plan is the Porcelain sweater by LeKnit. I'm gonna knit this up in my leftover Plödelope from my Nordic Nights sweater. I knit up a gauge swatch using the Plödelope, and I managed to get gauge using I believe these are 5mm needles. I believe. I need to get one of those, they're like gauge rulers that have holes in them, and you can put your needle in and test what size it is. I need one of those, but sidetrack. This is my gauge swatch for the Porcelain sweater. I love the fabric it's created. I'm going to hold the Plödelope on its own, just single-stranded, and I love the drape that this fabric has made. It's just fantastic, and it's exactly what I envisioned for the Porcelain sweater. The colors I'm using are Marsh, and I'm going to use this as the main colorway. So this is Marsh, Heathered Marsh, I think it's called, and this is Heathered Oatmeal, and this is going to be my contrast color, which is sort of opposite to what the pattern looks like. The pattern has a beautiful white main color with blue, but I am going to flip it. So I'm going to do my dark color as my main color and my light color as my contrast. I would like to knit more than one of the Porcelain sweater. I am in love with this pattern. I love how it looks in so many different colors. I would love to do a white and a sort of emerald or forest green version, but for now I think I'm going to knit the first version up using this Plödelope. So I'm hoping to cast that on this month. Again, I'm going away hopefully to the States, and I would love to have that sweater done by the time I go to Colorado. The next plan that I have is actually a gift knit for my dad and possibly one for my mum. So my parents are going to be traveling to Spain next year to hike the Camino. I cannot remember which way they're going. Oh, I'll have to ask them, and I'll let you know if you're interested. But they will be hiking the Camino next year, I believe in May. And to practice for that and to train for that, they're going to be going to Tasmania at the end of this year around Christmas time to hike one of the tracks down there. And my dad really wants me to knit him a cowl, or a buff, he likes to call it, to keep his neck warm and to cover his face should he get cold. He wants me to knit it out of a merino yarn, and I'm thinking I might go for a Drops Baby Merino. Please let me know if that is okay for people with sensitive skin. my dad can get quite irritated from any itchy fabrics, and he doesn't want anything that's going to irritate or itch his neck, especially if he's sweating. So he wants something sweat wicking, so obviously the merino, but he wants something that won't irritate. So please let me know if Drops Baby Merino is a good choice for non-irritating merino yarn. If not, please let me know in the comments what yarn, merino or wool based yarn, is good for people with sensitive skin. As for the patterns, he sent me two that he likes the look of. So we've got Pathfinder Buff by Rugged Knits, and the, forgive my pronunciation, Grytviken Cowl, and that's by Rockall Knits. So he wants something textured, but he wants it in a neutral color, so no variegated yarns or anything like that. So that's my next plan. He's desperate for that. He wants it before he goes to Tasmania, so I'm probably hopefully going to cast it on either this month or next month so I can get that to him before Christmas. Then whilst my dad was looking for patterns, he found a buff pattern that my mum actually really loved, and it's the Little Creek Buff by Jacqui Verbeek, and she loved this pattern. She doesn't have as sensitive skin as my dad, so she's happy with whatever yarn, and she wants it in sort of like a yellowy sort of mustard color, so I'm going to knit that up for her for Christmas. I have no other plans or acquisitions to tell you about, so I'm going to move into some knitting chat. I'm not going to knit on anything whilst I talk about this because all of my whips I need to count and increase or decrease for. So I'm just going to talk you through what I've been reading first. I think I mentioned in my previous podcast, I have a little book club with some friends from work where we read romance books or books that sort of interest us. We ended up choosing to read A Curse So Dark and Lonely. And this is by Bridget Camara. I think that's how you pronounce it. This is a YA fantasy Beauty and the Beast retelling, and I really enjoyed it. I think if you're in a reading slump, YA is probably the best way to go, and if you're just getting into reading and you want to read some fantasy, I always suggest obviously ACOTAR, but YA fantasy is also a good place to start to help practice understanding new names and place names and fantasy plot lines. There's a little bit of romance in there, but not anything intense. So I finished that. I gave that I think 3 stars, and I have just started reading the sequel, A Heart So Fierce and Broken, and I'm enjoying it. I think the writing has definitely improved from the first book to the second, so I definitely would suggest giving this series a go. As I spoke about in my previous podcast as well, I am reading Fourth Wing. I'm so excited about this book. I think, how many pages? I'm 50 pages in and I'm obsessed. I started reading this on holiday but needed to finish off A Curse So Dark and Lonely, so didn't get too far into it, but I am obsessed. The writing is fantastic. The plot is so interesting, and I'm interested in not only the main character, but I'm actually super keen on all the side characters. This is a adult fantasy, I believe, about dragons, which is so fun, and I'm loving it so far. So excited to get through this one. I've also seen some TikTok recommendations of some other books. If you enjoy Fourth Wing, they gave some recommendations on some others, so I'm excited to get into those as well. On the flight home from Western Australia, I listened to Hook, Line and Sinker by Tessa Bailey as an audiobook and finished that, and it was fantastic. If you're into cheesy, steamy romance, definitely suggest Tessa Bailey. Her writing is super easy to get into, super digestible, and her characters are just so fun and so interesting. So I finished that one up, and then along that same line, I bought The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang, and I have no idea what cover this is, what like edition this is, but I found it at a bookstore on the way to Dalesford, and I think it's super cute, and I've been wanting to read this for ages, so I'm happy that I picked this up, and hopefully we'll get to this book this month. As for movies and TV, whilst I was with my family, we watched Happiness for Beginners, which stars Ellie Kemper. I know Ellie Kemper mainly from The Office, but also The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, which is one of my all-time favorite TV shows. if you like a bit of comedy, some lighthearted watching, I would definitely suggest that. Happiness for Beginners was super funny, so if you're into a lighthearted comedy movie with a little bit of romance, I definitely suggest that one. It's cheesy, easy watching. I'm not saying they're gonna win an Oscar, but it was definitely a funny movie. And I also recently started watching The Wheel of Time. I binged the first season with my dad whilst I was away on holiday. I was originally intending to read the books first, and I have the first, I think I have five of the Wheel of Time books, and I was intending to start the first one this year so that I could watch the show, but the second season has started coming out and I decided to just start watching it. And it is fantastic. If you love high fantasy, if you love complex character arcs and interwoven storylines, I definitely suggest Wheel of Time. It gives me Game of Thrones energy, but completely different world. And the magic system is super interesting, and all around super keen on that series. Now for knitting podcasts, I have of course been watching Penrose Knits non-stop. I have joined her Patreon and so watched her first few videos on there, and she also brought out a new podcast episode, which was fantastic to see. She's also knitting up a Moby sweater at the moment and she is absolutely flying through, so that's sort of inspiring me to maybe pick it up again. We'll see. Otherwise, some new ones that I've been watching, I recently started watching Andrew from the Albernac Knitter. I think that's how you pronounce it. He's from Scotland and I really want to go to Scotland. So I've been watching his podcast and he is super interesting to listen to, and I love seeing his knitting and what he's been working on, so he's pretty awesome too. I think that's everything I have to share today. I feel like that went by super quickly. I had a lot of finished objects to show you and I feel like I just blazed through them all. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know down below what you have been knitting on, what you've been watching and reading, please. I don't need more books added to my TBR, but if you have good recommendations, I will always take them and add them to my Goodreads anyway. I'm trying to get a little bit better about posting on Instagram. I'll put it just here so you can follow me there. It's Hayley Space, same as this channel. And I'm hoping to post a little bit more progress content, so showing you guys what I'm working on as opposed to just photos of my finished knits. Otherwise, I hope you're safe and well where you are, and I hope you have a lovely September. I feel like August absolutely flew by, so I'm hoping September slows down a little bit and we get to enjoy, you know, the second half of this year a little bit. The weather is starting to warm up a bit here, so I'm hoping to get working on some summer knits and spending some more time outside, which will be super exciting. Otherwise, I hope you have a lovely evening and get some more knitting done, and I will speak to you in my next video. Thanks so much. Bye.